Hey everybody, it's Dr. Brizendine, your instructor. So what we're doing today is we are having an in-class activity. Now obviously we haven't had an in-class activity in 748 yet, but now's a good time to start. In many of my undergraduate courses I have a number of in-class activities, sometimes 10, 20 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes. Today I had intended it to take 30 to 40 minutes, but the students are working hard and they elected to continue working. So we spent the last 10 or 15 minutes or so going over some of what we had discovered, and we'll pick it up on Tuesday. Now, how this works for you guys as online students, or in the case of one special student, a non-campus student who was not in class, is you still got to do the assignment. You still have to do the in-class activity. It just means you may be working alone. If you are an online student and you want to form a team of 2 people, then you can self-select a partner. If you work in a group more than 2, then that's academic dishonesty. So if you want to do that, great, but it's on you to find a partner. Feel free to use the discussion board to maybe interact with someone, or if you want to email someone. Usually at DSU it's first name dot last name at trojans.dsu.edu. Some students, if they've been around a long time, they may have a slightly different email address, but in that case you could always interact with them through the discussion board. I imagine though most of the students probably will just choose to work by themselves, which is fine. So for the in-class activity, you get 1 week approximately. So I'll set the due date for Friday of next week. There is no grace period. So what that means is we have to be proactive in terms of how we consume our educational content, how we consume our videos. We don't want to be waiting weeks to watch a video or choosing not to watch it, because then we may fall behind and we may not know how to do something like SEH. So we will be having activities throughout the semester. I think it's a great way to enforce some of the learning concepts and allow us to do better on the actual assignments. Some of the in-class activities are very small, some of them are much larger in scope. This is one that is, as far as my in-class activities go, is a little bit larger in scope. So I'm asking a little bit more of you. I haven't decided on the point value. It'll probably be 5 to 10 points. And these activities usually are not worth as many points. But because I am asking a little bit more of you, there is a higher point value to it. So let's get on with it and talk about the actual meat of the task here. So I have a very old MP3 audio player for you guys to install. We'll take a look at that in a moment. And your job is to fuzz it and to create a working SEH overwrite script. Now I'm giving you a big hint here. So this saves you the trouble of going through what could be a long and tedious process of checking every possible input. In this case, it's nice because it's an M3U file. And those tend to, for whatever reason, in the past they've been susceptible to vulnerabilities, just not handled in a very safe fashion. Now, as you get started with an M3U file, I would encourage you to examine a normal M3U file. If you don't have one, you can use the software utility, the audio player, Serenity, to create one. So I'll show you that in a moment. But before that, let's get on with the rest of this. So create a working SEH script doing both of these. This proves to me that you understand what's going on. You're not just trying to find an answer from somebody and copying it. So I want to see the pop ret, and I want to see the add ESP. Those both accomplish the same thing. They both remove 2 D words or 8 bytes from the stack. So if we're trying to do this, well, I guess I'll show you that part in a moment and the actual, I'll go ahead and do it anyway. So we could do load, I'll show you in a moment. And the second part is we want to establish the cause of the vulnerability. Now, it's going to be a buffer overflow that will permit an SCH overwrite. So we know it's an overflow. How does it happen? What function causes it to happen, if it is a function? What's the specific input into that function that makes things go amiss? So you need to trace that and discover the exact vulnerable location. There's one place, one function in particular that I'm looking for. So a few different approaches that you could take to do that. You could take a guess at where is an input for M3U file. Where is that going to be? Look for that in your IDAPRO, and then explore what happens next. See if it's traced that input. Is it handled safely, or is it handled in an unsafe fashion? Okay. Another possibility is you could wait for the crash. You could look at the stack. It'll give you an address, and you can trace backwards from there. And I start to talk about that a teeny bit towards the end of what we did in class today. Some other things you could do is you could look at, say, strings. Is there a string for opening a file or a playlist or M3U? And you can trace that into IDAPRO. Where does that lead? Does that lead to where you're actually interacting with the program? Are there functions out there that you suspect may be involved with the M3U file? If so, maybe you could set a breakpoint in WinDbg. Maybe you could open it up in IDAPRO. Now, to really be successful at this, you probably need to use both WinDbg and IDAPRO. And we'll take a look at that much more closely on Tuesday. So if you've never used them before, that's okay. You won't get to that part now. You can see more of that on Tuesday, and then you can do that part of the in-class activity. So another aspect of the in-class activity is I kind of give away the answer to some extent. In this case, because this is a graduate level course, I'm not giving away all of the answers, so we may establish a pop-popperette. We didn't today. We started to, but we weren't successful. But I'd only do one of these, so if I do pop-popperette, then you'd have to find the add ESP8 yourself. Now, the tracing of that probably is going to be more challenging for most of you, so some of that may just be following along in the video and then trying to replicate that on your own. So with that, let's go to the VM. Okay, so I provide you with a script to get you started. It is pretty basic. We have a buffer. We add to that. This is not going to be enough. Guarantee it. And then we have a payload here. So if you start to get a little bit more fancy and you understand what's going on, then go ahead and do a buffer, add an NSCH, add an SCH, add your NOP sled, which you really don't necessarily need for this, but it doesn't hurt. And then your shellcode. You can really skip the shellcode if you get it to go down the NOPs. If you get it to go with the NSCH, your jump 60 or jump 6, and then go down the NOPs, then you effectively completed this. You don't actually have to get a shellcode if you want to. That's fine, but it's outside the scope. This one right here will overwrite that. That's just how Python works if you didn't know that. So in this case, the only thing we have going here is just buffer, however many A's that is. So once you get a little more fancy and get your NSCH and SCH, then you would want to comment this out or simply delete it. We create a file here, an M3U file, and we open it up and we write it out. Or what do we write? We write the payload. So you'll have a utility to install. So I've already installed it. was trying to type, but it wasn't responding. It's called Serenity. And that's how it looks. You can drag and drop your playlist onto it. If you want to add an MP3, you can do so. So if you don't have an MP3, you could create a new text document and just rename it file.mp3. Then you could save it as an M3U file. That way you know the format of an MP3U. Is there a particular header? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. And you could use a tool called O10, which is an IA lab, and you could view the hex content of that. But actually, this doesn't require any particular header. So, but I would encourage you to go through that process just because it's really the proper workflow here. So let's go. We've opened it up. Our next step is to open up the WinDbg. That we can attach. So it's file and then attach to process. I just type T. If you have F6, you can do that. I'm on a laptop, so it's just more awkward than it's worth. So, and then since there's a new process, it's going to probably be down towards the bottom. So I hit my end button there, and I open it up. What it does is it automatically inserts a breakpoint. Every time you open something up in WinDbg, that's just what it does in int3. That's a breakpoint. So, what do we want to do? Well, we want to hit G for go. Otherwise, if you want to pause it, you do the debug break like that, and you can't do anything. This is frozen solid. So hit the G, and now you can interact with it. So let's go on back to our script. This one generates a file. So it's a little bit different script than what we've been used to. So we generate that file, and we can go to our Cygwin. And let's see here. I don't know why it minimizes it in that fashion. So I should have had something there. I did have it there earlier, but I deleted a bunch of stuff. We have no error messages. That means it probably did its thing. We can go to the directory and we can actually confirm it. Let's go ahead and sort by date modified. If you have a lot of stuff, it just makes it a little easier to find it. So there it is, and just simply drag and drop. And this isn't going to really do anything because, well, I guess it did do something. So we got an exception, an access violation. We would want to, at this point, what we want to do is we're not trying to overwrite EIP. And EIP is 404255. We want to check our EX chain, our exception chain. And this is, the FF is always going to be at the end. Naturally, we have not overwritten this. So we saw some of our, it was here a moment ago, right there. We saw our B's there, but we didn't go far enough to overwrite the exception handler. So this is our SEH, this is our in SEH. We need to overwrite both of these. If you're not sure where or how, then you're going to want to revisit the videos and revisit your reading. It gives abundant detail. Right now, it's just a kind of a refresher to get you going. So I think that's probably enough information. One little tip here, interacting interacting with WinDebug, you can do the Alt D for this debug, and then I do the R for restart. Then you can restart this, hit yes. All we're doing is just loading a file, so it makes it easy to just simply restart the process that we're debugging. If it's something more complicated to set up, this isn't going to work. But for this particular case, there should really be no issues. So we restarted it, we hit G, and we're ready to go. We might even minimize the screen like that so we can interact with this easily. We could have the folder down there so we could drag and drop and go do our debug restart. Anything you can do to just make your workflow, your process a little bit easier. Right here I have a scratch pad. I don't know if you guys have that in yours. But there it is right there. So you could add a scratch pad if you wanted to type little notes in there, or maybe there are commands you don't remember. And so it's an easy reference. You don't have to tab out of this screen into somewhere else. So again, it's just a reminder, if we want to break, we can go ahead and do the break there, and then we can enter our commands. It'll break automatically if there is an exception. So at this point, what I'd like for you to do is stop the video, pause the video, go work on this, and try to overwrite SCH. So spend an hour or so on it. And when you're done, you can unpause the video and watch the rest and see what the class came up with. We had a number of groups that finished or came close to finishing. They did provide me with some answers. There were a couple little slight issues, but in any case, I think it'd be useful for us to check out. So that's all I have for now, and I'll talk to you guys in an hour or so. Okay, let's get together as a group for our final 10 minutes. So I'll give you a starting point here, give you opportunity to work on that. And what did we come up with?
Takes 1,028 bytes to overwrite
1,028?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the start of my NSCH?
That'd be...
or that's the total amount?
Yeah. So 1024 would be at the start of the version.
1024? So our next step then is to establish SEH and NSCH. So I guess I'll go like this, so it's valid code. This step, of course, would involve making use of WinDebug. So right now I started it, I attached it. I'm going to do a breakpoint and then load pykd pyd, which is a compiled Python. That's what pyd is. So we then invoke Mona to get our SEH. Do we need to worry about no bytes? Anybody? Don't think so. If we have a problem, we can always address it later. So we did our SEH command. So at this point, we would have done some of the fuzzing. We can get the output there. Open that up. So what I asked you to do is pop ret and also add ESP8. So I'm asking you to try it both ways, which you may have only done one in class, but once you've done one, you can pretty easy to do the other one. I'm assuming there's added ESP8. Are there added ESP8s? Yeah, there's no problem there. So let's try pop ret because that's what we've been talking about. We do note the 00, so that is a null byte, and that's going to be common in all of them. And obviously, it hasn't been an issue because we have a very limited number to select from. So that would be my SCH. And then I need to take care of the little Indianness aspect of it. So I'll just do it like this. And there's another way to do that, which some of you are aware of, but we'll get into that at a later stage. And then our NSCH is, it's got to move this over here. What's our NSCH going to be? The back group over there, somebody talk? So that looks like it would be good. So we have our payload, we have our buffer, NSCH, and then NOPS. We could do some of those if we wanted to. NOPS equals X90. Or you could do something like move EBP, which is a functional NOP. It doesn't do anything, doesn't harm anything. And we could do 60 of those, which if you do it correctly, in some cases, you don't need to bother with the NOP sled, but it doesn't hurt anything to have it in this case. And then we could have our shellcode, which it's going to be nothing. Before we do that, though, I'm going to increase this to 50 or 40, just so we can see what happens with fuzzy and malicious input. So now I'm in the screen, we're in a breakpoint, we want to get out of the breakpoint, so we do G for go. And we know it's because it says debugger is running, it's busy, we can't really issue any commands or do anything in here. Things are not available to us. So we then need to go generate our output. And I need to see where I saved this. Looks like I had it saved in 2 places, but and this will go, and obviously it'll generate M3U file. And so let's do audio studying. And I have unexpected indentation. Python is very strict about indentation, so if you have any of that, it's not going to work. We have no error messages. That lets us know that it's successful. So I want to go navigate to that lab 8 directory. Sort by date modified. This is open, so I can just go ahead and drop it. And I don't see anything, which is a good thing. So we have a crash here. So we have EX chain will allow us to view the exception chain. And so I see both of them are occupied with A's. One of these I want to be the SCH overwrite. Which is the SCH overwrite? Which is the top one? And which is the NSCH? Or is it even there? It'll be the bottom one, the one in red. So through fuzzing, we could go through and find those if we wanted to. You guys have already done that, and you said it was 1024. So if that is correct, then we should be good to go. Well, I guess I should have done what I told you guys to do earlier, but apparently I did not. So save this and then need to generate the file. We have our crash. Was that correct? 1024? That's not correct? Group in the back?
Yeah, we have 1020.
You had 1020 or? It's possible also I may not have saved it or something. Oh, it wouldn't matter anyway because, duh. So this one, we have payload here, it writes the payload, and this overwrites that. That sometimes it's a feature in Python, sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not helpful. So in this case, I would need to comment that out because it's going to be...
Comment out the A and B at the top. Oh,
This here overwrites it. But I could comment it out, it just would be redundant. We may not get very far, we'll see. I keep closing it. It's not very bright of me. What I mean by keep closing it is I can just do the D, Alt D, and then R, and then it restarts it. So you don't have to mess with any of that. Doesn't look like that's quite correct. You're getting close. We're getting closer, but it's still not quite correct. Maybe something with my code. I may have some kind of issue at play there. What am I doing wrong? Is it 1020 or is it?
Yeah, because it overwrote the return address when we did 1024, then the 4 after, which is rewrite. Yeah.
It's still not. Was it the 90 down here the previous time? I don't remember. All right, it looks like we're out of time. I don't want it to keep you guys longer, but I will give you guys a hint. So this, you guys some of you may have solved it. There may be some minor issues here in mine, but your next stage is to look at the stack. And this is already insightful right here. Now, sometimes when you have an issue, you can do KB or just simply K, and you can view stack unwind information. In this case, we see those have been overwritten, so that's not useful to us. sometimes we can trace the functions that were immediately preceding. Right here, though, we see image 4000 plus 4255. The image is always going to be the executable itself, so it's the Serenity. And by that, I mean if I type LMF, I will see all the modules, and at the top there will be the image, which is the Serenity, starting address 400,000. So at that location, we'll go U400,000 plus 0x4255. This is where the crash is happening. So that would be an area to investigate. Now, if you just try doing it in WinDbg, that's not going to be enough. You really need to involve your IDA Pro. So we'll take a look at, I have them in separate VMs, I apologize. So if you go over here to Serenity and you load it up, you can go into the options, the general, the line prefixes, and this way you can trace the functionality. So we had 404255. This is where the crash happened. What leads up to that? So, if we're in this function, we can also look at the cross references to that. So 2 different ways to get there. Which one did we go down? At this point, we don't know. So that's one approach. Another approach is, well, I guess we'll find out more on Tuesday. But that maybe gives you some insights into some of the steps you could take to at least start trying to discover the core vulnerability, which is where in the code does this happen? Is there a certain function that is vulnerable? What's the input to that function? But mainly I'm interested in just the function itself. All right, well, if you have any questions, let me know after class. All right, thank you.